Let me, with no further interruption, invite Seline Korir to come forward. She's the director for the Kenya Tunawezo program, a USAID-funded program that works in informal settlements across Nairobi, essentially to reduce politically motivated conflicts. She has over 19 years of experience, which means she must have started when she was very young, and has been a technical advisor to the USAID and SNV, the Netherlands Development Organization, for many years. She is an award winner in many spaces, particularly in terms of 2001, she received a Swiss award for the Prize for Women's Creativity in Rural Life. And in 2009, she was awarded a Certificate of Merit by the Royal Norwegian Embassy and the Governance Forum donors in recognition of her services to the internally displaced that came out of the post-election violence of 2007-2008. So she is the right person to initiate a conversation around the role of civil society in conflict prevention. Welcome, Seline.
Thank you very much. I will also start by looking a bit back where Kenya is coming from, but I'll be more candid than looking at the ethnics and the presidentials. I will start by, of course, acknowledging three key things that are important to me and also to Kenyans, but I'll also try to make three confessions before I say how prepared are we as civil society. And so I want to start by saying that we acknowledge the fact that Kenya has two-sided of history, both good and bad in equal measures. We also want to acknowledge the fact that Kenyans have experienced governing systems that have actually promoted power imbalance and inequalities that has become a point of entry of violent actions with every coming elections. We acknowledge the fact that irrespective of our diversity, that we are so proud of as Kenyans, we have practiced negative ethnicity in our dealings that has left us divided very much on tribal lines, creating a sense of exclusion, dissatisfaction. And this is actually the situation that is easily manipulated politically on each elections. I also want to make confessions, and the three confessions that I want to make is that I must confess that our forefathers, of course, and mothers, if we wish, and successive governments never taught us how to share amicably. In fact, what they taught us is to go to the streets and shout for our rightful shares, which if we fail to get, we end up becoming violent. And that's what we see in our streets many, many times. I must also confess that we Kenyans have the greatest weakness of violating every rule of law. And any society that does not respect the rule of law cannot sustain true peace. And that's a confession that I'm making on behalf of Kenyans, but also on behalf of myself. I must also confess that we Kenyans have never been kind to one another. Many times we talk about politicians, but I want to say that we've never been so kind to one another in our relations and interactions. And when we try to be kind, we end up displaying prejudice and discrimination against each other, one another. Now, Kenya has had elections. If my statistic is not very right, I see many faces. Sam and Guli and everybody else, and of course not on here, who may correct. But I want to say, if I'm not wrong, Kenya is going on its 11th election. The first election was in 1963. The second was in 1969. Third, 1974. Then 1979. Then 1983. 1988. We all remember it for the Mlolongo issue. 1992, which of course was preceded by the what we call ethnic violence, which was actually, we always say, politically instigated violence. And then 1997, 2002, and then 2007, which was very explosive. But I want to say that in all these, most of these elections were actually done by executive. Most of them, I'm not saying all. from the citizens, from the civil society, and so we ended up having violence. I also want to say that during all these elections, the civil society has been the conscience of the society. They've been very consistent in ensuring that the transition is done in Kenya. Just make a point of insight, or where are we, even as we sit at this Serena today. I'm saying that Kenyans are in the mood of conflict, because from the top to the community, even to the family level, everybody is saying something and everybody is disagreeing with something. So we're really setting the pace that we are actually in the mood of conflict. And this one, we don't need a research, because we can also see it at the political campaign platforms. Actually putting systems in place to ensure that Kenyans do not go into another violent elections, just like 2007, 2008. Okay, election 2013. What are the civil society doing to prevent? One very important thing that I think also Dr. Levy has mentioned is that the civil society are really engaged in monitoring situations and incidents that may be a threat to peaceful elections. And so what we see happening a lot, we see a collection of early warning information that can inform early interventions. We see a lot of monitoring of hate speech, which has been mentioned already, that may actually reach the public through cell phones, social media, vernacular radio stations. We see the civil society engage a lot in conflict mapping, analysis, mapping of actors, and then a few of just the visible platforms that are really engaged in this. We have Uchaguzi, we have Ushahidi, Usalama, Uyano, Amani Sasa, Concerned Citizens for Peace, and many others. Those, if you are here and you've not had the platform that you engage in, please know that this is not all-inclusive. It's just a sampling. The second thing that we see civil society doing a lot is we see the civil society strengthening local response systems and resilience. And this, we see a lot of pre-election activities going on across the country. We see post-election planning, pre-election planning going on. We see a lot of enhancing communication flow systems between stakeholders to ensure that at least there's no gap left. We also see a lot of enhancing networking among stakeholders and enhancing, of course, peace messaging, which are more targeted efforts and learning. I guess this could be one of them. So we see a lot of strengthening linkages and partnership at different levels, the community levels, national levels. Actors are coming together to partner, drawing lessons from the previous elections, 2007, where people thought that everything was okay and they could do it alone. We see a lot of county-level civil society coordination meetings that take place almost every month. If we go to any county, the 47 counties in this country, One Kenya, One Nation, we see a lot of USAID partners coordination meetings taking place across the counties. The last one, final, is a lot of civic education. So people are really raising a public awareness on what must be done and what must not be done. And one of the big questions that people are now focusing on in civic education is, can we be prepared for a runoff? What if there's a runoff? How should Kenyans handle themselves? How many days should we wait to see some other information building up to give way forward as Kenyans as we go? And also targeted messages as targeting the supporters of presidential candidates, letting them know that it's not about your candidate. It's not a must that your candidate wins. Because if Kenyans are not going to be prepared, that they prepare for two things. They can win, they can lose. But they should be able to take it that in whichever side, we are all winners, because Kenya belongs to all of us. Kenya does not belong to the presidential candidates. And so there are a lot of that that is going on. So messages are very well targeted. So we see a lot of disseminating of the content of the Constitution, 2010 Constitution, because we have another one, so we have to be very specific. A lot of awareness on devolution, what this means, because there's all the chances and the opportunities for it to be left to be manipulated by the politicians about devolution. It's not about taking a bus and going to Sagana or taking Nyaugenya and going to Nyanza or whatever. It's really about devolving and taking resources near to the people. So down there in the communities, many people do not access proper information. And so ensuring that that propaganda is confronted, then the dissemination of the content of the Constitution is very key. There is a lot of induction of platforms going on the importance of national cohesion. See a lot of, we even started with the national anthem. That's just a portion of it. Supporting citizens, of course, to acquire identity cards. This is a recipe for conflict. When young people don't get identity cards, and they are sure that if they voted, then their candidate would win. If the candidate fails to win, that young man will not sit back. He will react somehow to vote. So that once they fail to vote and they fail to get the leader they want, they don't go to the streets or start pulling railways or start burning houses. Then, of course, there is a lot of campaigns to get out the votes. People are being told, including all Kenyans who are here, go and vote the leader you want, right from the top to the bottom, so that we don't remain to start with a language later on that will trigger violence and hatred among Kenyans. And who are doing this? We see almost all civil societies doing this with support from the international donors and well-wishers. In conclusion, this is an extract I got from just a meeting that took place, actually, of the media and the civil society on the 6/7/2012. I'm putting this as a challenge. It was observed that time, but I'm concluding with it as a challenge that still persists. It said the ability of civil society organizations to contribute to the prevention of violence surrounding election has not been necessarily smooth sailing either. Although projects have been done and early warning alerts have been made, civil society has often seen itself incapable of translating such warning into actual preventive actions. At the same time, it should be noted that civil society is a diverse and heterogeneous group that does not always manage to align of its efforts. More so, at times, activities of one group might be counterproductive or even altogether of completely opposite to what others are doing. That is still a challenge despite the many efforts. Early warning information are being collected, but still translating into tangible intervention response is still a big challenge. And that is a challenge that we are all working around as the civil society working around, and the question on the table in every platform. How do we ensure that all the early warning information that we get are translated into really early response? I want to thank our Kenyan government. At this time, we hardly thank our government for giving the civil society legal mandate to operate and do anything, whatever within their reach, to work for peace and a peaceful transition in this country, even though I have not heard that there is really a budget for civil society to do the peace work, as much as peace is the main thing right now. But still, I haven't heard if there is any budget. Somebody may want to whisper later and correct me, but I haven't heard so far. So I don't know how important it is to the system if there is no budget for civil society to work. But I also want to thank the international community, the friends, some of whom are here. Thanks very much for the many years they have supported peace-building efforts in this country. It has been a journey, but it's a journey that cannot be walked right and well and with better footprints if there were no friends standing with the organizations and the agencies that are really putting effort to ensure that Kenya remains one, irrespective of challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. But I think it would be premature because we have two interesting speakers to speak into this context. And what I've asked them to do is to essentially focus on what's missing. We've heard an examination of the context, and I won't repeat that, but there is a lot there that I think both Levi and Seline have spoken about. We've also heard about what does the media put in place in terms of new regulations, new standards, and we've heard also from society in terms of how they're preparing for the elections, in terms of early warning systems, local support mechanisms, and preparedness for the election process. So what's missing? What is it that we can learn from Ghana or South Africa or elsewhere in the world that we could bring into this context? And I'll ask them to be very specific in the context of the time frame that we have. So strategic planning for the next 6 months is probably not one option that we could take. We have 21 days to the election, first election. And then there is a question I think Seline has asked. If there is a runoff, the predictable is that the country will become... so given that we have the benefit of hindsight, we know that that period will be a bit tense. What is it that we could put in place in those days that could allow us to make that transition responsibly and in a